Hello, a warm good morning to all. Myself, Jacob, I'm here to present my topic for the seminar titled Contemplation in Literature. So I will start my presentation. Why should someone write? What is it that a quietist or a contemplative find in words? Why is that one who is in search of or running away from something that is inescapably tremendous and unified ends up immersed in a swarm of clogging words? These are some of the mind whistling questions I will try and address with this article. In his autobiography, the existentialist thinker Jean Paul Sartre is famously quoted saying that he wrote because he had nothing else worthwhile to do. Well, it seems so, for he was in another sense blessed with a marvelous career of almost 80,000 pages of exceptional and existential words. And that itself proves his lifelong dedication to that pure and intelligible realm where words and thoughts integrate and coexist. Words, indeed, the perfect title for the autobiography of such a dedicated scholar. In a different context and in a general sense, Natarajaguru seems to have directly attacked the vaguely constructed viewpoints of the then modernists, pointing out with the precision and clarity of the clear blue waters of a Tiesta river what the relevance of a probe into the purpose or meaning of existence is, if it does not involve or fulfill any human value. Sartre is not differing much from the standpoint of Natarajaguru, only that his theory of philosophy is not rooted so deeply in such solid or firm grounds that it springs forth from realms of emptiness or nothingness that could further be negated to produce a more mystical realm, pure and fully transparent, where thing and its non-existent counterpart abide in complete harmony. After all, where does the negation of nothingness lead one to? Natarajaguru's vision extended to grounds that even the most serious among the scholarly or the academic seem to have overlooked, for a veritable science of language, laying the foundations for a veritable language of science, is a deep, definite vision only the best of philosophers could even formalize in the first place. He torches further light into the deep, complicated word-thought equilibrium when he refers to scientific thought being the resultant of the two ways of reasoning taking place simultaneously in the space of linguistic thought. A close scrutiny of Narayanaguru's works is sufficient enough to contemplate on the above referred to ways of reasoning being same and common to all. Here too, subtle linguistic wonders hidden deep beneath unintelligible frontiers that run the common everyday movements is fairly alluded to, for the scientific experimental models in verse 10 of the Atmopadesha Shadagam hints at the same linguistic subtleties when ontological disparities and multiplicity meet and fuse in the semantic unity of the pronoun I. When Sartre commented on the famous Cartesian proposition, I think, therefore I am, in one of his early works, the semantic distinction between the I that thinks and the I that says that I think becomes plainly evident. Such gentle weak spots led the former to revise and present the dictum as I am, therefore I think, where the amness presumably preceded the I, or at least the thought about the I. However, only a thorough study conducted in purely Vedantic lines could help save a dedicated student from falling into subjective manipulative traps laid forth by this very amnes, which should be understood from a trans-subjective position. The amnes here should be equated to the being with a capital B of Martin Heidegger, something which completely transcends subjective realms yet remaining both subjective and objective or neither the two at one and the same time. On a more general note, I, amnes and thoughts should find complete lucidity in movement and structure in accordance to a mixed underlying format. Where thoughts and word dissolve and dilute in mutual harmony like inseparable lovers, pure poetry and prose springs forth from creative grounds. The underlying factor that distinguishes a serious academician or a scholar from a poet or a novelist must be the element of vasana residing within the personalized consciousness of the latter. An advantage or a burden this creative element is, only someone like Guru Muni Prasad could say. As Martin Heidegger stated in respect of the highly spiritual epistemological works of the poet Friedrich Holderlin, the poet and the philosopher should walk together, for their far-fetched vision and unbending ambition relentlessly points to the same unitive direction. Even the late continental philosopher Henry Bergson, in the autobiographical work The Creative Mind, alludes to the artist or the novelist undermining their own creative qualities, for his scientifically valid metaphysical philosophy suggests of the imaginative artist deriving or attaining inspiration from higher intuitive levels. In Plato's Last Days of Socrates, Socrates is heard indicating about a divine dispensation. The other day, a random word unannouncedly burst into my running alertness. Quack, quack. The uninvited semantic guest kept repeating itself day in and day out in intelligibly relatable mannerisms of a complaining partner. All the while, the image of a lovely whitish duck waddling against the backdrop of the splendid Nilgiri hills ran into this psychological catastrophe, superimposing itself in this wild intellectual project. When the lights faded away in the smooth, transitionary elegance of the sunset, I persuaded myself into deciphering the mysterious unity of this bizarre, unrelated, yet simultaneous occurrences. How on earth could a mere resonance from the realm of imagination evoke an image of a duck from the Nilgiris? I wondered and exhausted myself till nightfall. And how could the stains of a remembered sound be traced so correctly and flawlessly into words? I furthered the unplanned casual musing until sleep time approached and turned the lights off my whirling mind. The renowned playwright Samuel Beckett is seen quoting, "I am in the middle, I am the partition. I have two surfaces and no partition. On the one hand, the mind, on the other, the world. I don't belong to either." So, what exactly is this I that does not belong to either? Here, either refers to the sensible and the intelligible worlds in the terminology of Immanuel Kant. Beckett, knowingly or otherwise, takes a phenomenological stand where he identifies the mysterious, incomprehensible I as a conductor or a mediator between the outside and the within, something that holds together or balances the two worlds, thereby producing a solid, flowing reality. And it is exactly here in this structural scheme that words are introduced or superimposed from intelligible realms to sensible ones by the conductor that I is to efficiently construct an orderly, lawful reality. As Wittgenstein famously said, and Natarajaguru is seen quoting many a times, the intellectual framework of nature precedes herself. Even if I was to wake up tomorrow to an altogetherly different reality, the I in me would remain the same and stable. And what are words but unconditional, irrevocable fulfillers of this sublime mediation or conduction, assuming the similar characteristics of electric waves that unbelievably passes through conductive electric wires. A candidate who is determined enough to measure the exact experiential accuracy of the proposition the best of all possible worlds, or even a Willy Loman who is set to fulfill his dearest dream of a consumerist paradise, have all, either understandingly or out of ignorance, experienced the harsh indifference of the world out there. Then there is this contemplative seaman who could undeniably be distinguished as one among the rare, reflective, adventure-seeking souls, having confronted and endured hurdles, obstacles, hardships, and great troubles in his 66-year-old life that was mostly spent in the seas, about an impassive, inscrutable universe amidst which the trials of a human spirit are depicted as what Joseph Conrad wrote about in highly mystical and contemplative style with the aid of a prose language that is even to this day unparalleled or defeated. Why does or what makes Conrad's contemplative, highly descriptive words stand out in time amidst the flood of literature that has been swarming around since time unknown is nothing but the reflective consistency and precision in his thoughts and the fine, rightly put words that often come with a tinge of rawness, for the unfiltered, salty scent of the seas many a times virtually blows straight into the reader's suspended senses when immersed in the raw delight of his prose. It must be the reason why Sartre happened to quote Conrad when methodologically decoding the imagination. In a remarkable literary career that spanned almost 30 years of the 19th century realist era, Conrad contributed extensively to the then evolving literary modernism. Taking inspiration from the Cartesian coordinate models, Natarajaguru developed a fully revised and highly flexible coordinate scheme in which he was able to amazingly incorporate the different aspects of consciousness or reality into a structured methodological scheme by making correct use of the horizontal and vertical axis. Nothing could be plainly fitted into this vertico-horizontal scheme of values or essentials, thereby making this scientifically rooted scheme an adaptive and highly useful one. What makes Conrad's maritime life also attain a special status in Natarajaguru's scheme of coordinates is that the introverted mariner seems to have touched upon every combination or aspects of the intersecting coordinates by means of the different phases in his becoming. It is to be noted here that we are utilizing Guru's scheme of coordinates in order to incorporate Conrad's life into its structure. In Almayer's Folly, for instance, the protagonist Caspar Almayer eventually finds himself isolated and lonesome in the secluded premises of his house. He spends the rest of his days, as the novel's ending suggests, smoking opium in a dire effort to forget his daughter who abandoned him for her lover. Here, considering that Conrad took inspiration from his own personal life, through the protagonist Conrad's personalized consciousness, from a generalized standpoint, touches the negative horizontal of Nataraja Guru's scheme of coordinates, for the Guru had placed opium eaters and passive daydreamers in that zone. However, interestingly, peculiar is the inclination of this particular instance to the negative vertical as well. For though the protagonist's habitualized routine of smoking opium and idleness makes him an ideal candidate for the dull negative aspect of the horizontal, the folly of Elmeyer consists not merely of passive lethargy, but one filled with reflective episodes and self-seeking and deep introspection. Thus, it is totally right to state that Almayer's Folly moves or floats between the two poles of negative horizontal and negative vertical, as his moods of complete despair and hopelessness is one of a meditative or thoughtful quality. Fast forward to 1902, 17 years after the publication of his first novel, Conrad comes with his seventh novel, a shorter and more heroic one, Typhoon. Captain Magua, the protagonist and commandant of SS Nanshan steamer, a quiet and peaceful person, much to the disconcert of some colleagues, happened to face one of the most dangerous and challenging situations of his sailing career when the ship he is heading stares numbly at the incoming threat of a typhoon. How he rises to the occasion, much to the dismay and astonishment of some among them who had taken for granted the introvertness in him, and how heroically and masterfully he heads the ship out of the appalling danger is narrated in brilliant descriptive manner in this short novel. The positive horizontal aspect of the Guru's scheme is in the foreground throughout the narrative, since the captain is faced with a life-threatening situation, and it is the sportsmanship and goodwill and determination in him that makes him rise to the occasion. All the mentioned qualities pertaining to the positive side of the horizontal aspect of consciousness. Though a major part of the highly acclaimed, well-known Heart of Darkness indulges in a third-person narrative involving the stunning experiences and encounters of the fictitious English seaman Charles Marlowe and his narrated voyage to the Congo River that consists of unbelievable, deeply disturbing visual caliber, though it being so, and even still debatable is the fact that the first person narrator, taking it obviously to be Conrad itself, being only a passive listener of the narrated adventure, the plain and simple fact that it is Conrad himself who is writing the story makes it even more transferable, the depth and intensity of Marlowe's thoughts to that of the polished writer himself. The stillness of life contemplates Marlowe, just as the life situation he is put into drifts more swiftly and fearsomely than the asteroid ship he inhabits in one of the remotest part of the stranded island where Mr. Kurtz, the man he is in search of, is set to reside. So, what exactly is this stillness of life, and where in the schematically developed coordinates should this certain stillness be placed? Henry Bergson had concluded one of his metaphysical studies by referring to the then scientifically experimented theory that beneath the endlessly breakable qualities of entities that features wave particle duality, it is change and change alone that quietly resides underneath the confusing, seemingly impenetrable paradox. Bergson here is completely alluding to the scientifically decodable life activities or cosmos with a touch of mysticism and metaphysics in his approach. By taking into simultaneous consideration Conrad's statement and Bergson's findings, a passive observer may be tempted to ask whether the stillness of life and Conrad comes within the amplitude of Bergson's underlying changes, or does the stillness transcend endless changes of the observable? In other words, where exactly should we place this stillness of life, if at all it is placeable or determinable? Is this stillness rooted in ontology or is it epistemological? It is a fact to be considered that Conrad is neither a trained scholar nor a scientifically inclined dialectician, and his mystical contemplations on the calmness of life may well be justified even without the aid of scientific experiments or observations. And due to the very same reasons, it becomes highly difficult to thoroughly plunge and extract the full implications of his deeply contemplative visions. Nor are they just limited to the sea-scented reflections of the polished writer alone. There are other instances and examples of innumerable other novelists and writers as well who have traveled similarly mystical path. We are not here trying to vainly put all the great names onto the heart of this light-hearted, limited inquiry into the contemplative aspect of literature. And there is undeniably sufficient accuracy in placing the stillness of Conrad onto the positive aspect of the vertical axis of Nataraja Guru's scheme of coordinates. For, in the extremity and harsh brutality of the moment, the protagonist confronts or contemplates, comes face to face, perhaps, with the stillness that lies beneath all the disastrous, destructive chaos and madness of the outside world, thereby transforming the later into mere occurrences or mirage that are possible and feeble with its eternal, irrevocable presence in terms of absolute stillness. I happened to read Conrad's Heart of Darkness in Uti Gurukulam right after studying, as much as I was able to, Guru Muni's commentary on Narayana Guru's Atmopadesha Shadakam, and the deeply mystical and abstract content of the latter is what made me curious and understand better the essence of contemplative literature. The present inquiry is far from complete or thorough, partly because of my limited knowledge in this literary field, which is greatly vast and expanding, like a universe in itself, and also because of the generalized nature of the work, having discussed seemingly different yet essentially related units of consciousness like the phenomenological I, thoughts, and words, a certain stillness. It is supposed that only through a serious study of philosophy could these elements or units of reality be integrated or correctly placed in their respected slots within the transcendental expanse of consciousness that is impersonal and generalized. The first question with which we started this inquiry could well be better realized with suitable integration of these many elements of consciousness. Thank you.